Everybody ready to go? Sorry about the small delay to those that have been waiting. It's been a long day and we've had a lot to get through. So I'll open the meeting now. Formally, this Planning Committee meeting of Colac Otway Shire, 6th of December 2023 at 4:10. Opening prayer. Almighty God, we seek your blessing and guidance in our deliberations on behalf of the people of Colac Otway Shire. Enable this council's decision to be those that contribute to the true welfare and betterment of our community. Amen. I would like to start this afternoon by acknowledging the traditional custodians and lawmakers of this land, the elders past, present, and welcome any descendants here today. This meeting is recorded live streamed with the exception of confidential matters. This includes public participation sections of the meeting. The live stream recording of this afternoon's meeting will be available on the website as soon as practicable. By participating in open meetings, individuals consent to the use and disclosure of the information they share at the meeting, including any personal and/or sensitive information. I note that all 7 councillors are present at the meeting today. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest today in this planning meeting? No declaration of interest. I'll move on to confirmation of minutes. I propose that we move to confirm the minutes of the planning meeting held on November 1, 2023. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Arnott. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Is it to be opposed? No. I'll move that the minutes of the meeting on November 23 are passed. We now move on to verbal submissions from submitters. Verbal submissions from those submitters who have confirmed in writing that they wish to speak to their submission will be heard prior to the consideration of the agenda item. A limit of 5 minutes will apply to each submitter. Item 8.1. Buller Development Plan 91 to 149 Forest Street, Colac. Now we move to that item. The purpose of this report is to consider stage 2 of the development plan prepared under the Schedule 6 to the development plan overlay for the Buller Dairy Food site at 91 to 149 Forest Street, Colac. We have one verbal submission from the applicant, Kylie Armstrong. Yeah, there she is.
Thanks, Joel. Thank you, everyone. I'd firstly like to thank everyone for your thoughtful consideration of our Greenfield site development plan today. Special recognition is due to the planning officers, particularly Blorheen and Ian, for their unwavering dedication and support that they've provided to our Buller team throughout this application process. And also in preparing the comprehensive report with a clear recommendation in time for today's council meeting. This was critical to us to ensure that we met one of the key milestones of this important project. I'm also pleased to share that we have received a formal board approval for our internal business case for this project, expanding the footprint of our existing Colac manufacturing sites. This will bring much needed additional capacity and capability for our business, also enhanced efficiencies and promises of employment opportunities for both existing and new employees, with up to 35 staff per shift, as well as 8 new administrative roles. Our directors are committed to maintaining our manufacturing footprint here in Colac, ensuring Buller's sustainability as a family business for future generations to come. I do need to note that this is a significant investment and a huge commitment on behalf of the business, and it's going to be great for our community. This project is not only just a new factory, it is a catalyst for a positive change in our community. We anticipate substantial opportunities, fostering economic growth, contributing to the development of a thriving Colac community. Together, we can shape a future filled with possibilities and shared prosperity. We recently held a drop-in session with our local neighbours that covered essential aspects of our proposal, providing them with an opportunity to meet some of our Buller team members and answer any questions that they had in relation to this development. Some of the topics we covered included the co-location of this new facility and where it will be located in conjunction with our existing manufacturing building, leveraging off both the entry and exit points of the existing factory from Forest Street, which was important to us. We also discussed inclusion of the additional 104 on-site parking spaces to be included in Stage 2A of this development that will also be more than sufficient for Stage 2B. This also includes a lot of new landscaping, including tree planting. We know this was something that was really important to our neighbours to visually screen the development from both our Hearn Street and Fulton Streets. Installation of a new acoustic fence along the south and west of the buildings to prevent the off-site noise impacts and reduce the headlight glare from any moving vehicles throughout the site was also an important factor that we discussed with them on the night. We also shared the confirmation of EPA support for the proposal with no required changes in environmental matters. And I'm pleased to report that there were no objections submitted following this engagement session, reflecting a successful night and positive community sentiment. So just to reinforce, this is a really exciting project for Bulla, but also for our community as we seek approval of this development plan application. Thank you.
Thank you, Kylie. Are you willing to take any questions?
Yeah.
Any councillors have questions? No question? Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Kylie, for your presentation. When you had the consultation with the members of the community around you, did any of them raise concerns requiring you to modify anything, the work that you were doing, or the proposal for light and noise mitigation?
No, they were all quite comfortable. We had all the drawings up around the wall, and we took them through the detail around where the fences and the trees and all that. We took them through some of the detail from an EPA perspective as well to give them confidence that we were managing that effectively.
And they all felt comfortable with that?
Yes, they did. Yep.
Thank you for that.
No worries.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thanks, Kylie.
Thank you.
Do councillors have any questions of officers in relation to this? No questions? Okay, councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with a report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to this matter? Councillor Arnott.
I'd like to move a motion that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Arnott. You are the mover of the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Potter. Is it to be opposed? Not to be opposed. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. Look, I just think this is an example of an exemplary development within our community to expand the industrial base that supports our whole community and the economy of the area. I guess it's probably an example of how to do things properly. Bulla have engaged in an appropriate consultation with their neighbours to ensure that they address things appropriately for them. They considered the concerns that might come up first to try to address them before that they become a concern. So I congratulate them for doing that, for that drop-in session. It provided an opportunity for people to speak firsthand. And it's nice to see them addressing those things such as landscaping, the visual impact when people look at the place, the lighting. I think that's an important thing. That's something that's been often ignored in industrial settings, but I'm glad to see Bulla's doing something about that and in a proactive manner. And that the EPA has given them tactile support for this demonstrates the whole process has been very well thought out. And I can see from the existing operations and from the support that Bulla has given the community in general that they obviously see themselves as part of the family of the Colac community. Thank you.
Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Don't really have much to say after the summary given by Kylie, which was a great snapshot about what this is actually about. Jobs, growth, confidence of the Board of Bulla, not just in the business, but confidence in Colac Otway Shire to continue expansion here. So this is a fantastic project. Bulla is a fantastic Colac corporate citizen, and I congratulate them with bringing this project forward, and wish them all the best for the construction, and hope it turns out that in the way that they envisage. As I said, jobs and growth, and continues to put Colac on the map around the world. Congratulations, Buller.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Finnegan.
I think it's been put quite well by Councillor Arnott, Councillor Potter and indeed Kylie herself. It's really good to see this project move forward. It's all about jobs and jobs growth and the like in our region, and they're things that are very important to us. I, like many young people within the Shire, have spent time working in Buller my younger years. In fact, if you've seen me sitting here in council meetings crunching my shoulder, it's due to the fact I fell up a flight of stairs when I was working there in 2020 and the injury still remains. But on that note, I still think that, you know, this is a positive outcome for our region. This development plan going ahead is going to lead to a lot of young people being gainfully employed for a long time, and provide more jobs to us and lead to an increased economic impact in our region. That's why I'm supporting it.
Thanks, Councillor Finnegan. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, I just want to touch on, I think what's really important is that, it might not have been mentioned, is that this is a development that's, you know, in the appropriate zoning in the industrial zone, but it abuts rural lifestyle zone and even some general residential zone, and that the two can actually work. And the importance that Kylie did touch on of the acoustic fencing, but also landscaping. And I think Buller in the past has done a very good job with their landscaping, and that, you know, it's a very good example of how, you know, a large manufacturer can be a good citizen while, you know, while living alongside, you know, a rural lifestyle zone and even a general residential zone.
Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge the efforts of Buller in working with the neighbours on this particular application. I also note the positive comments that have been made of the planning officers involved. I think it's pleasing to be able to support an application where the applicant has worked so well with neighbours. And I do note a particular feature of this which I found rather pleasing, is how there was a design for the vehicle access, for the truck access, so that it can enter and exit the property in a forward motion. I think that's really showing some sensible consideration in how that particular site has been designed to operate.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. It gives me great pleasure to support this motion. And congratulations to Buller, and thank you for working through the process so thoughtfully and carefully with our officers. Thank you.
No other councillors wish to speak? Councillors, I now call for a vote. All those in favour? Against? The vote is now carried 7-0. Thank you. Now we move on to item 8.2, three-storey mixed-use building, 9 Dennis Street, Colac. The purpose of this report is to consider the application for the construction of a three-storey mixed-use building with basement parking at 9 Dennis Street, Colac. We have no verbal submissions. I'll now call for questions of officers from councillors. Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. One of my prime concerns, and if I can give a bit of background to this question, relates to the fire escape at the north side of the building, where people who may be short-term residents who are not familiar with the area could come out and find themselves between a fence and a large building, approximately 2 metres of space with trees growing there, and how they would have to walk around either the east or west side to get out on the street, perhaps past a building that's on fire. So is there anything council can do? I understand that this is in part considered as part of the building process, to draw attention to the need to give consideration to that issue, and also that the side gates, there's meant to be gates on the side, I understand, which will be locked, that they are not locked on the side of people who might need to escape the building via that north exit during a fire.
Through you, Mayor. Fire safety issues are considered, as you mentioned, under the building permit process rather than the planning permit process, and that includes essential safety measures within the building such as fire detection, sprinklers, safety exit, fire doors, etc. But through the building process, they'd also look at all fire safety measures. To highlight the concern that you've raised, what we could do is we currently have a note on flagging the fact that a building permit is required for the building. So we could add to that or highlight in that note the need to give particular concern to fire safety measures such as those you've mentioned, including the need for rear egress from the site, particularly from that rear staircase, to be unobstructed so that the gates aren't locked, and that can be addressed. I believe the applicant has already indicated the intention would be that they'd be locked from the outside so people couldn't access the site from Dennis Street, but unlocked from the inside so people leaving in the event of an emergency would be able to get out safely. So, as I say, we could add wording to that effect to a condition, to a note at the end of the permit, just effectively saying that matters relating to fire safety, including egress from the site onto Dennis Street and surrounds, must be addressed through that process.
For what it's worth, Mayor, I think that would be a good idea.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. So we'll add that to the note. Any other councillors have questions? Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. An objective of our planning scheme in Colac looks at improving the energy efficiency of buildings through passive solar, on-site renewables or low-embodied energy. Are there any of these issues, these matters, addressed in the building proposal?
Through you, Mayor, matters relating to things like construction materials, etc., which would input into that would be addressed again through the building permit process. A key one that normally you could anticipate would be to have windows facing north, but in this case the applicant has actually placed more emphasis on the sensitivity of the interface with the residential land to the rear, and has opted to try and mitigate the overall impact of the building on those residential properties through the provision of a green wall on the back. As I say, rather than opting to look at solar access to that elevation, they very much sought to mitigate the impact of the building on the residences.
Thank you.
Follow-up question.
Thank you. And a follow-up on that north wall, which is proposed to be a green wall, or a living wall of plants. But there's only a 2.2 metre setback from the fence line, and that within that setback there's trees to be planted. I'm just wondering how it's physically possible to maintain that green wall. Has the applicant proposed any method of maintenance, or is there a mechanical plant or something that's proposed to assist that?
Through you, Mayor, the applicant has advised that there be an automated irrigation system. So most of the maintenance would be through that automated system and water tanks. There would potentially be longer-term maintenance required, like replenishment of mulch, etc., which they've also committed to doing as part of ensuring that the green wall was maintained in a good condition throughout.
And how will they reach up to 11 metres high on that wall?
Through you, Mayor, as I say, most of the maintenance would be an automated ongoing maintenance. When needed, they would be able to access it. It may be through ladders or other elevated platform methods.
Any other councillors have questions? Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor. Just further on from Councillor Costin's question there, is it possible to have an assurance in the design that there will be access for suitable machinery, like an elevator platform to get between the building and trees? So just to have an assurance around that design mechanism so that we can say the wall will be maintained.
Through you, Mayor, as part of the process, the architects would already have looked at this matter, particularly in terms of maintenance of green walls. They have already had experience in that, so they would have ensured that suitable access is provided for maintenance.
Okay, thank you. And if I may have a further question, please.
One follow-up question.
Yeah, just in respect to, my computer's decided to go blank on me. The lighting, it talks about lighting being appropriately and hooded and whatever. Do we actually have a lighting plan that will be ascribed to this to make sure we have professional advice around this? A bit like Buller has done to make sure there's no unnecessary overspill of lighting to neighbours' properties.
Through you, Mayor, yes, as part of the proposal, a lighting plan was submitted, and there is a condition actually proposed should the permit be issued to require suitable baffling and screening of that light to make sure it doesn't impact particularly on the sensitive residential properties to the rear.
Thank you. Councillor Hanson.
Just two questions. Is it unusual to have commercial and residential abutting each other? And how long has the property, the blocks in Dennis Street, been zoned commercial one?
Through you, Mayor, in terms of the interface question, it's very common to have an interface between different zones, including between commercial and general residential. As I think somebody mentioned in terms of even of Bulla, we've got an interface there with rural living and general residential zone. So zones will meet each other, and there's always a sensitivity around the interfaces when you've got a residential zone on one side, but it's certainly not uncommon in any way. In terms of how long Dennis Street has been zoned, it's been zoned commercial for a long time. I actually don't know, and I've just consulted a colleague. We can't say exactly when it was zoned, but certainly I've been working here for over 10 years, and it's zoned well before that.
Thank you. Councillor Finnegan.
Thanks, Mayor. I guess my question relates to the proposed condition 9 of the officer's recommendation, which states that any live music must be limited to acoustic music only and must only occur within the function room. The use of full drum kits or heavy percussion instruments and live DJs is not permitted. No live music is permitted on the external terrace. Now, with that, just probably a few things to clear up regarding the wording of the proposed condition 9 there. Does condition 9 mean that all music must be completely acoustic and unplugged? So, for example, acoustic electric guitars, which one plugs into amplify through a PA, will they have to be essentially mic'd using ambient microphones and the like if they wish to have that music amplified?
Yes, so any live music it talks about must be acoustic. So there could be background music as well, just to make clear that would be the only other type. Must be acoustic, so that would be in effect without direct electric connection or anything to an amplifier. You could have a mic in front of it, but again, condition 11 of the permit makes very clear that any amplified music at all within the building must meet EPA legislative sound levels. The other thing that has been done in the suggested conditions is to ensure that all live music is actually indoors, so confined within the walls of the building. It prevents use of the terrace for live music, and again, that's to contain the music. There's also a screen proposed on the external terrace, 1.8 metres in height, and again, that's a noise mitigation measure to control, if you like, how that noise can escape the building. So between all those measures, it's considered that it would be at a level that would be acceptable in this location.
Follow-up question, Councillor Finnegan.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So just clarifying on the basis of what's been said there. So, for example, if the hotel operator, if this permit is approved, or this item is approved, if they were to have entertainment of any form within the function room, that entertainment would essentially have to be a musician, whether it be someone just singing, perhaps with a microphone in front of them. They couldn't use an electronic keyboard, they couldn't use an acoustic guitar that plugs into an amplifier. That all entertainment must be from essentially acoustic instruments that are not amplified in any way other than via an amplifier, other than via a microphone in front of them.
Yeah, in effect, it would not be allowing use of electric guitars. Drum kits are specifically mentioned as well as not being allowed. Percussion instruments are mentioned. And as well as that, there's also the condition prevents live DJs. So really, it's and this was something put forward by the applicant. So I think it was recognising its use as a function room rather than a live music venue. It's not anticipated that the use is going to be for bands or anything like that. If anything, you know, it's acoustic music, background music more than louder.
One last follow-up question.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Finnegan.
And as you've pointed out, this was something that was suggested by the applicant. So the applicant would be very aware that under the basis of that, if they were looking to, you know, have a group who were looking to bring in someone who advertises themselves as an acoustic musician for a function within the function room, that a lot of acoustic musicians who classify themselves as that will use things like, you know, drum machines or beat pads, looping pedals and the like with an electric guitar, with an acoustic guitar that plugs in, so that essentially they would be in a position to provide a rider. Would they be in a position to provide a rider, I guess, or a form to all musicians essentially that you cannot plug anything in, it must only be mic'd?
Given this was put forward by the applicant, I would anticipate they would be making very clear during the booking what instruments were allowed, and any breach of that would be actually a breach of the planning permit.
And the final question on this basis, if those conditions were found not to be met, what would be the enforcement actions?
As I mentioned, if there was a breach, they would be in breach of the planning permit, so we could take compliance action against that and would be looking to ensure A, it didn't occur again, and B, making quite clear what was actually allowed by the permit.
Thank you.
Any other councillor got questions? Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. I wonder if we considered in any way the possibility of noise generated from rooftop plant, and how close can that rooftop plant be to the residential areas?
Sorry, just bear with me a moment. I'm just looking through the conditions because I believe we have... Yeah, so in condition 32 basically states that all mechanical plant and equipment must be located within the basement level or on the rooftop. So they couldn't go on the rear elevation, and that condition again specifically states that it must not be located adjacent to the northern property boundary, and that's in recognition of the residential properties beyond. So that condition would seek to control the location of any plant. In addition, there's a general condition, a condition 37, that seeks to control the emission of noise, etc., from the premises. Is plant mentioned in
Thank you. Any further questions?
Just a quick follow-on.
Follow-up.
So is there any specific distance that rooftop mechanical air conditioning plant should be from the residential boundary?
Through you, Mayor, there's not one specified in the condition, but should you consider that appropriate, you could actually look to insert a distance in there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. Just following on from Councillor Costin's question and your answer. So what distance might be an appropriate distance if that was to be inserted?
The reason we haven't actually specified a distance is because A, I don't know that there is a specific distance per se, but B, we have actually put a condition on condition 13, for example, and that set of conditions relate to EPA requirements in terms of noise from premises. So through that, and it's pretty normal as well for hotels to screen plant to make sure that it has minimal impact on surrounds, they would be required to comply with EPA legislation on noise limits.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Hart.
That's a good answer, thank you. I just wonder if, and I appreciate the fact you've been able to reference from 32 to, I think it was 13, but I wonder if, and I take your point about not having a distance, would it be useful to draw that link? In other words, could condition 32, I mean, they're two different conditions at different ends of the planning permit almost.
Through you, Mayor, if I guess the reason one of the conditions is at 13 because it's in connection with other conditions that specifically reference the EPA's legislation. So, you know, you've got the amplified music, you've got which refers to EPA legislation. Then you've got the acoustic report, which within it refers to EPA legislation, and that's why the third condition went on there at that point, whereas the later one at 32 and 37 relate to general amenity and start talking about kind of specific uses within it. But the permit conditions would have to be, a breach of either would be a breach of the permit, basically, so it would get read together.
CEO, you'd like to make a comment?
I'm just, seeking a clarification of the question. So the air conditioning plant is in the basement. Is there other specific plant that you're concerned about?
Basement or rooftop, the condition says.
Right, but the plans as proposed reference it to being in the basement, so there is that option. So I just wondered, is there other plant in particular, or is that the primary one?
If I can
Councillor Hart,
butt in a little bit and add to what the CEO's saying, is there plan for the rooftop, and if there isn't, then why do we authorise it?
There might be other minor plans.
The reason, so the plant would be at basement level as proposed. Obviously, there could be scope for additional plant to go on at some time in the future. We don't know if the building was built whether additional plant would go on. The condition was imposed to address objectors' concerns about plant potentially going on the northern elevation or the north of the building. So that is why the condition was quite specifically worded to try and address objectors' concerns and ensure nothing went on the north of the building in the future.
thank you. Any further questions? Good. Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any officer wish to move a motion in relation to this matter? Councillor.
Mayor, I'll move the officer's recommendation, but with the inclusion, hang on,
Councillor Potter.
still going, I was just waiting to get your attention.
Sorry.
With inclusion in the notes to reference concerns around safety in relation to a fire.
So that's the note that you're referring to?
Yes, I'm happy with that.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Arnott. Do I have opposers? Councillor Finnegan, Councillor Costin.
Thanks,
Councillor
Mayor.
Potter.
Thank you. Look, councillors, we're obliged to consider this application within the parameters of the planning scheme, and the planners have presented this to us after applying those rules, and I'll just remind us all that we've been to VCAT recently and lost a couple, and I think we need to be careful and clear in stating our reasons and considerations in our deliberations for this matter. But we've heard from objectors in relation to this application, and I do have sympathy for their concerns and fears. I would like to thank them for allowing an on-site visit recently. I found that very valuable. We've had a number of emails. Some of them have been very, very well researched by the residents, and been very appreciative of that. And I think the applicant also has been cognisant of their concerns and has attempted to placate the objectors as best that they could. The objectors, however, think it still falls short of where they'd like it to be. One of the issues that was raised was around car parking, and I think a fair enough issue to consider. And if this application is successful, then the development will displace employees that have been using the vacant land at 9 Dennis Street, and they're going to have to park somewhere else. And I'm not sure what the clear solution to that is, but really historically, having had a vacant block of land in the CBD to park on, it's been a bit of a luxury, and sooner or later that would have been built out, and now we have this application in front of us. This application is groundbreaking for Colac. It's a groundbreaking proposal. It falls within the planning rules, and it starts to address an urgent need in Colac for 4.5 to 5-star accommodation. It's innovative and forward-looking, that responds to needs, and some of those needs really have been holding Colac back. There's 38 conditions on the permit if it's approved. Whilst I do feel sorry for the objectors, and I hope their fears aren't realised, I do congratulate the proponent for putting forward something for us to consider to address a need in Colac.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillor Arnott.
Do I have a right of reply later, or do I speak
You
now?
can reserve. You can
Sorry?
reserve.
I can reserve.
Yeah.
So I'll reserve. Thank you.
Reserve. Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you, Mayor. And I will echo Councillor Potter's statement that this hotel proposal, it is innovative for Colac, and on the whole, it seems like something that would be good for the region. I can understand that. There's also been much said about objectors to this being NIMBYs or not my backyarders and against all forms of progress. The reality is the objectors here are, in my opinion, rightfully concerned with issues of what will be essentially Colac's largest, or one of Colac's largest buildings, appearing right over their back fence. And I note that some efforts are being made by the applicant to mitigate concerns of some objectors, and I commend them for such. Non-supportive of progress and generally want to see taller buildings within Colac from a modern standpoint, including within the residential zone, in order to make best use of our space. Permanent neighbours next door would hardly be an issue for most. But a new private hotel, 3 stories high, with new people coming and going, overshadowing abutting properties which have existed since the early to mid-1900s, with the proposed 3-metre fence which won't span the full backyards of the properties directly abutting, concerns me. We've seen issues in the proposed conditions around music from the proposed function centre and bar and site. So everyone knows I'm a musician, spent time as a sound engineer and running venues which present live music on a regular basis. Condition 9 of the proposed permit states that any live music must be limited to acoustic music only, and music must only occur within the function room. With the term limited to acoustic music only, many would assume the music would be limited to a guitar and piano player with no amplification whatsoever, and maybe a vocalist. Indeed, our planning officers have confirmed this, that one won't be allowed to plug any form of guitar in, acoustic or electric, into the venue or performer's PA, as this would no longer make music acoustic. This condition would mean acoustic guitars need to be amplified by use of microphones, which is much more difficult, means much more ambient noise and chatter is amplified as a result. We see larger amounts of feedback due to the amounts of gain on the microphones needing to be cranked to get the same impact, which would be pretty unpleasant for anyone in the proximity. Acoustic artists will not be able to use looping pedals or effects pedals for harmonising their vocals. I wonder how much we're going to spend as a council on getting enforcement officers out after hours for noise complaints, because
30 seconds to go.
it seems to me
Councillor
that the
Finnegan.
venue may have proposed, that the proponents may have proposed this, not realising that these are the conditions they're signing up for, that restrict them on the gear that people can use, and how are they going to inform musicians what gear they can and can't use, and how they're going to police that effectively. And that's why I'm voting against this today.
Councillor Costin.
Mayor, I know I said I would oppose this motion, but I want to propose a couple of amendments, if I could, and that may change my mind. I've got 3 in particular, with your leave, if I could. And I would
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Is Councillor Costin speaking against the motion, or is he proposing amendments? Which one is he doing?
proposing an amendment.
Proposing an amendment. Can you...
You need to move the amendments and not speak to them, please.
That's what I think we were getting to, is to move the amendments. Can
Yes,
you
it was
move the first amendment, please,
I was
Councillor
going
Costin?
through the preamble.
What's the amendment?
The clause 32 I'd like to amend, which is about mechanical plant within basement level or on the rooftop. I'd like to add a bit onto that clause that says mechanical plant at roof level must not be located within 10 metres of the northern property boundary to the satisfaction of the responsible authority.
So we're not editing the motion, we're moving an amendment.
This is an amendment.
We're going to need to work through this.
Okay, clause 32, condition 32, sorry. I'm proposing an amendment to add the words okay, after the full stop, I'm proposing the words mechanical plant on the rooftop must not be located within 10 metres from the northern property boundary to the satisfaction of the responsible authority.
Have we got that amendment there? Is that the entirety of the amendment, Councillor Costin?
10 metres of the boundary to the satisfaction of the responsible authority. The northern boundary, yes. northern property boundary. Northern property boundary. Mechanical plant, yes. Yes, thank you.
Sorry, we just need a little time, thanks.
Okay.
I wish I could see.
Thank you. I'm moving that amendment. Thank you.
That's the amendment. Have you got a seconder? Councillor Hart. Anyone opposing? Councillor Arnott. Yes.
Question for the officers is you know, it sort of sounds reasonable. Do you see any issues with that?
Through you, Mayor, given that there's no rooftop plant currently proposed, I don't see an issue per se. Obviously, there's no specific basis for the distance, but I don't see any particular issue for the operator.
Any further questions in relation to this? No. Councillor Arnott, you oppose the amendment?
My opposal is based on purely the question that Councillor Hanson has put to Blue Hen, which is in respect to, we don't know the roof design.
Point of order, Chair. I haven't spoken for
Sorry.
the amendment at this
Yes.
stage.
I apologise, Councillor
Yeah.
Costin, that's correct.
Sorry, I should have asked you to speak to it first. Councillor Costin.
Thank you. Now? Thank you. This just responds to the possibility, and I agree it's a remote possibility, but it is allowed by this condition that there be plant located on the rooftop. And locating it 10 metres from the boundary just eliminates the possibility of visual and noise impacts on the residential areas. Thank you.
Councillor Costin. Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks. A number of concerns in relation to this application, and some of them are probably not dissimilar to some of the comments made by Councillor Finnegan. But just focusing on this amendment, I note we're told, well, there's no equipment on the rooftop at the moment. Well, without some sort of safeguard, it can be put there and cause some of the problems and issues of concern of some of the neighbours understandably have. And I think what Councillor Costin is trying to do, and what I support, is at least have some indication that if you get it, that if you have that 10 metres, that you just, it uses the words must not be located within 10 metres. So at least you've got some sort of boundary that there won't be even, you would hope, even discussion about having plant closer than that if this condition is on there and this permit's issued. Whereas without that, at a later date, when we're not here, when the planning officers aren't here, there can be an argument that the plant can be installed, well, right up to the roof edge, really, because there's nothing to prevent that. So it might not be a perfect solution, but I support what Councillor Costin is trying to do, which is trying to have regard to the legitimate concerns of the neighbouring residents and the noise that could cause.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Councillor Arnott, as opposer.
I'm very concerned about the workability of this motion in respect to not having a rooftop plan. I actually support Councillor Costin's intent, and I'm trying to work out how I can support the intent and make sure that we can actually get a practical outcome. I'd hate to think that we end up with a piece of machinery that can sit 9.5 metres away from the fence, but we can't put it there because of the motion. And the reality is that the outcome would be no different for what the intent we're trying to do. So it's not so much I oppose the intent, I just think the process may be unworkable.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I understand the intent of this, but I think the issue that's being tried to address is adequately covered under the permit conditions. I'm not a builder. I don't know where plants should be situated on a roof, but I do notice to set a limitation now could potentially interrupt perhaps installation of solar panels to get a better outcome, climate outcome, reduce the footprint of the building, things like that. We're stopping that by including this, I think, and I think it's adequately covered by the permit conditions that officers have provided.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Anyone else wish to speak? No? I'll move to a vote. Coston, yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the comments of fellow councillors. I think this is just a safeguard measure. It's something that might happen. There's a remote possibility that it might happen. It's to protect the residential properties from looking up at ugly mechanical plant that may be located on the roof. If it's 10 metres back, it will be less unsightly. It also moves it back so that there is no direct line between any possible plant there and the residential properties, because that plant could include an air conditioning fan, even though the plans don't show it at the moment. But the clause, the condition as it's written, does allow rooftop plant right to the edge of the building.
Thank you. I'll now call for a vote on the amendment. All those in favour? All those against? Amendment's carried 4-3.
Division, please.
Division. All those in favour? Those against? Oh, I changed my mind. Yes, I did. So the names are in favour, Councillor Hart, Councillor Coston, Councillor Hanson, Councillor Finnegan. Against, Councillor Potter, Councillor Arnott, Councillor White. We'll move on to the next.
Sorry,
Back to the motion.
Amendment becomes the motion.
and I'd like to propose another amendment, if I could. Thank you.
So we have another amendment.
Thank you. It's an amendment to an additional condition after condition 12. And I hope the officers have the wording of that new condition 13, please. Yes, yes. So I'm proposing an amendment to add in condition 13, which seems a fairly standard condition, to require some monitoring of the noise in the first 12 months, so that we have a better understanding of what we think will happen is actually happening.
Yes, questions?
Mayor, I am inclined to second this, but I'm just unclear about the numbering. So is this now a new 13 and then everything else has to be renumbered accordingly? Perhaps that little bit needs to be clarified, that the amendment is to add this new 13 and everything else has to be renumbered.
Or is it? Thank you. Do I have a seconder for this amendment?
Can I ask a question, Mayor?
You can ask a question.
Of officers?
Yes, you can ask a question of officers.
I'm just wondering whether officers might have any idea as to the potential cost imposition for someone to have to undertake this work. So I know some noise noise acoustic assessments can cost, 30 grand. I know you're not in that field, but you may have some range that you can give me.
Through you, Mayor, I don't know the actual cost, but I wouldn't say it would necessarily be a cheap exercise. You'd have to engage somebody that was suitably qualified with the equipment to come at a particular time. And on that point, I would actually suggest if you are taking a reading, that it get taken on a weekend evening, maybe, because as it stands, the condition doesn't actually specify taking it at a time when the premises is most in use. So it may be that you actually require it to be taken during an evening function at least once a month, or a weekend evening function or something like that, so that you're catching it at a peak time when you get the reading.
Councillor Hanson, you've got a question?
Yeah, if you had a venue that's like now, if there was a complaint about noise from a venue, that's obviously a compliance issue or a local laws issue. Do you require, do you get acoustic readings then, or noise monitoring, or how do you deal with that?
Through you, Mayor, again, we go back to, I think it was condition 13 that I pointed out earlier, where it talks about having to meet specific noise levels. So I think conditions 11 to 13 are thereabouts, all talk about meeting EPA specified noise levels. If we get a complaint, somebody would actually have to go out and measure it. It would either be a council or EPA requirement to do that on a complaint, but obviously that gets investigated at a future time. Within a commercial area, unless there's a specific reason, particularly when the use is actually indoors within a commercial building, it's unusual to have requirements for sound readings around them, unless they're, like a live music venue or something and you're requiring soundproofing. So for example, one of the ones I can think of is the piano bar. When that started, we required soundproofing within the building and then some readings to be taken to show that soundproofing actually worked. But as I say, that was a live music venue.
Thank you. Anyone else got questions of the officers? No, so we have an amendment. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hart. We have an opposer, Councillor Hanson and Councillor Arnott. Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to alter that slightly on the basis of the comments made by the officers, that acoustic readings by an appropriately qualified acoustic consultant must be undertaken each month for the first 12 months during peak times of use of the function room. So it's adding in during peak times of use of the function room.
Happy to second that, Councillor Hart.
Happy to second it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, back to Councillor Costin.
Thank you for your indulgence in that. This really responds to the concerns of the objectors, which is in relation to noise, and it ensures that we are actively monitoring the noise emissions from this site. We are actively monitoring. We are not passively monitoring. We're not sitting back and letting it happen and letting someone complain about it. We are actively taking steps to make sure during the first 12 months that the noise is not exceeding what we want it to exceed, to provide some reassurance to the people who live in the residential zones nearby that their concerns are being addressed in an active manner. Thank you.
Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. I think that the importance of this condition, and Councillor Costin has summarised it well, is that we're demonstrating that we've had consideration of the neighbours' concerns in the residential area through this appropriate monitoring to ensure that the noise is not unreasonable. I think it's quite a modest step in the context of the whole development, and whilst some of the neighbours may ideally have preferred that the development not be here, we're reaching that compromise, if you like, and I don't think it's an onerous condition given the size and significance of this particular development.
Councillor Hanson, as opposer.
Yeah, I won't support this amendment. I think the applicant has listened to objectors, has taken steps to limit the type of music that will play. I think in reality, you know, it probably if it was operating 7 days a week, we would just have the most bustling economy ever in Colac. Maybe would love to see that. But in reality, I don't think, you know, there's going to be music until 11 o'clock, you know, 7 days a week. I think this is an onerous condition. It would be very expensive. We can't get an estimate of the costs. But the little I do know about this, and I do know a little, I have had some experience in it, you know, I think this could be a cost in the thousands of dollars, you know, in excess of $10,000. I just don't, there are conditions in here that do address the noise, do address the concerns of the applicants, of the objectors, and I think this amendment is over the top.
Councillor Arnott.
May I ask a question, please, of the officers?
This is debate now, Councillor Arnott.
Okay. I'd like to support Councillor Hanson's comments in respect to this. I think that this is quite over the top of an onerous condition on the proposed builder of this development. I think that they've tried to listen to the concerns of their neighbours around them, and I can assure those neighbours that we have seen all those concerns and take them on board. And they've placed this design of the building with the function right at the very, very front to try to take the noise as far away as possible. It probably takes it about a good 15 to 20 metres away from the nearest neighbour, with a significant building between then and that, with appropriate baffling noise maintained inside the building. It'll be a new build with all of the acoustic soundproofing that will go with that. So I just think that this is quite a problem. And the question I was going to ask officers, but I'll put it to anyone here, is how do they know what they're measuring? Are they measuring the noise from this place? Are they measuring the noise from the Austral, the cars going past, the other works that are going on around there, all the other activity in Murray Street, Colac, or Dennis Street, or anywhere else, or a party down Manifold Street in a house on the same night that the measuring equipment's there? So I think that this is almost an impossible impost to meet.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you. I'm going to speak in support of this amendment, and to touch upon the point Councillor Arnott just made around how they measure directional microphones is a big part of it. Now, I think that this amendment does go a long way to hopefully keep things in check with the venue, and that's why I'll be supporting it. And I think that it's understandable that for such a large hotel, I don't see it as completely unreasonable for with a function room like that's going to have music there. I don't see it as too unreasonable to have them essentially monitor noise impact that's being made for the first 12 months. So that's why I'm supporting it.
Anyone else wish to speak? No, I'll put the amendment to the vote. Oh, sorry, Councillor Costin. Final statement.
Thank you. Noise is a funny thing, you can't see it, so it's unlike a condition not to build above 11 metres. You can actually measure the 11 metres, but you can't see the noise. We're imposing conditions that the noise not be exceeded. This is just a simple way of checking. It's not an onerous task. It's required in many planning permit conditions to make sure that what we think is going to happen does happen, that the noise won't cause a nuisance to nearby properties. And noise, again, it's a funny thing because it moves with the wind. It depends which way the wind is blowing at the time. So it's a straightforward monitoring exercise in my experience, and it provides an assurance to the objectors, to the neighbouring residential properties, that we have listened to their concerns and we are actively taking steps to address those concerns. Thank you.
Okay, councillors, now I'll put the amendment to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? The amendment is not carried for 3. Division, those in favour? Councillor Costin, Councillor Hart, Councillor Finnegan, those against? Councillor Potter, Councillor Arnott, Councillor Hanson, Councillor White. Move on back to the motion. One more amendment.
With your leave, Mayor, I've got one more amendment. It's actually made up of 3 parts, but they're all to do with times, and noise and times. So I'd like to put them as one, with your leave. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the first amendment is related to condition 7, which adds in the words highlighted in yellow at this time. And I notice Friday has been missed in our little calendar there. So the word Friday should be inserted before Saturday, Fridays and Saturdays. Thank you. Yes, Fridays and Saturdays. Thank you. So what's changed there really is the inclusion of the outdoor terrace, and the time has changed from 12 a.m, Monday to Thursdays, Sundays and public holidays, to 10 p.m, and from leaves it at 12 a.m. for Fridays and Saturdays.
Got that up there.
Can we please see number 7?
Have we got that up there so we can see it?
Yep, thank you.
Working on it.
The next one is condition 10. And we should have wording for an amendment to condition 10 also. Thank you. And this just changes the times also. The Friday and Saturday is missed out, or the Fridays is missed out there. So instead of 11 p.m, it now becomes 10 p.m.
Councillor Costner, I think Friday's included Monday to Saturday. I think it's included in that time frame. Am I correct?
This is Monday to Thursday.
It's Monday to Saturday.
No.
In mine it says Monday to Saturday.
Needs to have the word Friday.
Is Friday included in that?
It must be turned off.
Councillor Costin, just a quick question.
Must be turned off between those hours, not outside those hours.
Okay.
So replace the word outside with between.
Any questions for Councillor Costin?
And one more, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
So the new clause 16 in relation to deliveries and rubbish collection. There should be wording there, 16. So I'm proposing the times be changed from deliveries cease at 8 p.m. rather than 10 p.m. and the next one is okay.
So it's 15 charge.
The old 15, it's the new 16.
Because we didn't renumber because...
Oh, so we didn't renumber because that motion was lost? Yes. So it's still the existing 15. So condition 15, that one should be? Yes.
Pauline, have you got some insight into this for us?
Sorry to interrupt, Mayor. I think on the draft condition 10 is referring to all music, not all live acoustic music. So all music.
I'm happy with all music, yes, rather than all live acoustic music.
Because there wouldn't be live music anyway between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. I think you're wanting all music turned off. So delete from live acoustic.
Thank you.
Okay, I see what... Okay, are we clear on that amendment now?
I'm not
Before I
quite-
ask for a seconder, is
well,
that clear?
yeah, I'm not quite sure
Councillor
that I
Costin?
understand number 10.
Number
If I'm-
10?
Without getting into debate, I just get concerned when the term midnights. So we're using midnight the day before, or hang on. So midnights to 7 a.m. What is it currently?
Just leave AM.
Can we see number 7 when you've got a chance, please? Oh, sorry. I'll just see the whole amendment. I can see the conditions as they are.
Okay, so is that the... It's in 3 parts.
No,
Are you...
yeah. Can we have a moment to go so we can match
Yeah.
what's there with what's on our screens, please? Thank you. 7 to 10 instead of 7 to midnight. Okay, good.
Yep.
7 to midnight. Isn't that 7 to 11? And then you lean it
Which one? 10?
Fridays and Saturdays. Number 10.
No, this is when it's turned off. Yeah.
We need to keep moving, I think.
I'm happy to second it when you're ready, Mayor.
You seconder? Is it going to be opposed?
Question perhaps for
Any questions for
Yeah,
Councillor
for
Costin?
Councillor Costin, just on the basis of it. And a lot of my, again, due to me running on business on Murray Street, I do hear a lot from people who just wander in and chat to me about issues. And one thing that has been mentioned to me, yeah, and you know, the question is...
There's a question.
Yeah, so the question is, would you be amenable with point 10 where it says all music, including any amplified background music, must be turned off? Well, basically all music, including any amplified background music, must not be on except during the period of between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday, Fridays and Saturdays.
Go on.
As in, so yeah, sorry, I should say. And where are we? My apologies.
So what's the question,
Like, would you
Councillor
be
Finnegan?
would you be amenable to changing that point 10 to say basically, rather than the times there, just having music only allowed between 7 a.m. and 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. on Friday and Saturday evenings, rather than just cleaning it up, but also that being the
Can we
peak
just get
time
advice from
for
the
the
planners
function
about
centre
whether
to
this
be
is clear
used.
enough?
Only
Ask
allow
them,
between
the
7
planners,
a.m.
rather than
and 10.
council.
Only allow between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m.
Okay.
on Friday and Saturday evenings.
Can I just ask, is this clear for the applicant, what we're trying to get to?
Through you, Mayor, the main music of concern, in my understanding, is from the function room. So, as it currently stands, Condition 7 allows the function room itself only to operate till midnight, Monday to Saturday, and till 11 on Sundays and public holidays. Condition 9 limits music to acoustic music only. Condition 10 requires live music to cease by 11 p.m. on Monday to Saturday and by 10 p.m. on Sundays and public holidays. So live music has an absolute cut-off point. The function room use has a cut-off point, so it's stopping anyway at midnight. They're very unlikely to have music continuing of any description in the function room once it's closed. So I don't think it's necessary to say you can't have music between certain hours when the function room and terrace aren't actually operational.
And I'm probably also pointing out the fact that there are school children directly behind where this is, and this sort of puts the hours of operation
And you want to make a
firmly
comment
into
here?
when they can
Excuse me,
operate
Mayor.
with music, but that's...
I'm happy to drop 10 out completely if you like.
Leave as is.
Yes. Yep.
So we've now going back to just amending 7 and 15. Okay. Is everyone clear on that? Can we keep moving now?
And the seconder is happy.
And the seconder is even smiling.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So
Again...
is
just
it to be opposed first? I need to know.
Yes.
Is it to be opposed? Councillor Hanson. Back to Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. This again just responds to the concerns raised by the people who live nearby in residential properties. It does seem excessive to allow the function room and by extension the associated outdoor terrace to be operated between right up until midnight on a Monday to Saturday. That seems excessive to me, an excessive imposition on those who live in the residential zone. And similarly for the deliveries, deliveries can be pretty noisy, people bringing in barrels of beer or whatever, and I think that could be easily organised before 8 p.m. rather than letting it happen up till 10 p.m. Because once you get old like me, 10 p.m. is almost past bedtime. Really. Thank you.
Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Mayor. These changes are similar to some of the others in the sense that it's trying to mitigate the negative outputs of this development, given that it's so close to a residential area. And I think the one on deliveries, particularly when you've got this site where trucks will be having to back in and have those beeper things going, piercing through the quiet times. I think this is a very modest amendment, and I'd be very surprised and disappointed if we couldn't at least have this modest amendment passed and try to mitigate this and have due consideration to the residents of Colac who understandably have some concerns about this. Such a minor change, to indicate that we are trying to at least mitigate this for the people of Colac, that we have heard their concerns.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, I won't be supporting this amendment, and if it's so minor, then it probably doesn't need to be there, does it? And we are starting to become restrictive. There are a lot of conditions on this planning permit, a lot that have taken into consideration concerns of the residents, and I just don't think it's needed, and therefore I won't be voting for it.
Any other councillors? Councillor Arnott?
Through you, Mayor, I'm not aware of the opportunity to actually question officers about this. If I may just put a question, please, if that's not out of order.
Governance? We're in debate, actually, Councillor Arnott.
I know you're in debate, but there was an opportunity given for questions before debate started.
Okay.
Yeah. If this amendment were to be carried, is it possible for an applicant of this nature to make a later application to council to amend these amendments or these conditions of this initial permit?
Through you, Mayor, any applicant, when they get a permit, can apply to amend conditions subsequently. So yes, they could apply to amend any conditions they wanted.
Thank you.
Councillor Potter?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'm a bit confused with all this. There's an amendment to have acoustic readings and all the rest of it. Now we're closing this down. Councillor Costin does mention he's in his pyjamas at 10 o'clock. Not everybody is, and I worry about the prescriptive nature of potential new business in Colac trying to set up and operate. So I don't think I'll be supporting this.
Councillor Arnott?
Thank you, Mayor White. I'm pleased to take the opportunity to speak also against the motion. I've listened to Councillor Potter and to Councillor Hanson and considered the early amendments in respect to this, and I don't see the need to put this over top of the requirements for the applicant, and I would not be supporting this motion. I think that they need the flexibility to make appropriate decisions about their business, and we have the capacity to monitor them otherwise, as demonstrated so far tonight. And I think that they would have demonstrated so far their preparedness to be a good citizen with respect to this, and I hope that we can trust them to do that to some extent in the future, and that we would then send them a significant indication later if they were not, that we would then appropriately apply the requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Finnegan?
I'm going to speak in support of this amendment. I do believe that, particularly the amended point 15, sorry, where am I? Yeah, the amended point 15 around deliveries and the like makes a lot of sense, considering we've got people who, again, live right behind here and right behind where these deliveries are going to be made. As we know, a keg hitting the ground or something like that makes a hell of a lot of noise, and this would help to mitigate those impacts and make sure that these deliveries are only happening within times whereby people are generally awake and they're not trying to sleep. And obviously with point 7, essentially we're seeking to amend the hours of what is a function room, which again abuts a residential area. And I don't think that the hours of 7 to 10 a.m. Monday to Thursday and Sundays, and between 7 and midnight on Fridays and Saturdays is particularly an unreasonable ask to pull it back to. So that's why I'm supporting it.
Any other councillor wish to speak? I'll now put the amendment to the vote. And sorry, final statement.
Thank you. Thank you. We've heard a number of things from councillors opposing here. One, that it's too prescriptive. Well, it's already prescriptive. I mean, the times are in there. All it's doing is changing the times, so you can't say it's too prescriptive. It is a minor change. It's a modest change. And Councillor Hanson said, well, why put it in there then? Why put it in there is because it's a major issue to the residents who live nearby. It's a major issue to them. Councillor Potter talked about, well, you know, people don't go to bed before 10 a.m, but I'm sure you remember back to the days when you had children, they're trying to go to bed before 10 p.m. So it seems just quite reasonable to restrict deliveries to before 8 p.m. Someone mentioned, well, one councillor mentioned, well, we don't need it because we have the capacity to monitor. Well, that's what I was trying to propose in the previous amendment, and it was voted down. We don't have the capacity to monitor. We're going to rely on these residents to ring up and complain. Who do they ring at midnight? Who do they ring at 11 o'clock? Who do they ring anyway? The council or the EPA? That's unclear. I don't know if you've ever tried to complain about the noise. The police don't want to listen. If they're around, and EPA, EPA aren't based here. And council officers are home tucked up in bed as well. So I think it's quite a reasonable, small change. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Costin. I'll now put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? The amendment's carried 4-3. Division. Those in favour? Councillor Hart, Councillor Costin, Councillor Finnegan, Councillor White. Against? Councillor Arnott, Councillor Hanson, Councillor Potter. Thank you. Now we can move back to the motion.
Surprise, I've got an amendment.
Well, we've got to go back to where we started, which was Councillor Costin putting forward the amendments. They've been carried. Now we're back to...
I haven't spoken on the
Substantive motion
yet, but I'm happy to hear Councillor Finnegan's amendment first.
If we're all good with that. Mine was going to be to point 10 within the officer recommendation. So the officer recommendation says live music must cease by 11 p.m. Monday to Saturday and by 10 p.m. on Sundays and public holidays. I'd like to see that amended to say all music must cease. All music must cease by 10 p.m. on Friday and Saturday evenings. Must cease by 10 p.m. on Friday and Saturday evenings, and by 7 p.m. all other evenings.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hart. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Potter. Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you again. And again, this point has been made throughout that with... just wondering, are you looking for a copy of... Sorry. Yep. Yep. Do you want me to wait?
Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you again. This is just a simple amendment to point 10, simply just to state that live music, all music must cease by 10 p.m. on Friday and Saturday evenings, and by 7 p.m. all other evenings. This is just in recognition of the fact, yes, this building isn't a commercial zone, but it directly abuts a residential zone with many houses that have been there for a number of years. And yeah, no young children alike. I think it's a common sense amendment to make. That's why I'm moving it.
Thank you. Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. I agree. This is a common sense amendment that would enhance the limited listening that we've managed to get through in the last period of time. I think that particularly with school-aged children, it's important to have that noise minimised as much as possible for the weeknights, which is what this is trying to do. I think this is only a minor impost on the applicant, and yet it would be a major improvement for the neighbouring residents who have raised legitimate concerns about the proposal. And again, it's a way of breaching that gulf between a proposal that's wanted in the commercial zone but will have negative effects on neighbouring residential area. This is simply an attempt to mitigate or reduce those negative effects.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Who was the opposer? Councillor Potter.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised, to be honest with you. Surprised by someone in the music industry wants to restrict the ability to get work. I'm surprised that we're going to invite business people, outside professionals to come and enjoy Colac for work or play, but we tell them, yeah, we'll have someone playing guitar over your meal, but make sure your meal's finished by 7 because you can't have any music after that. Like, just ridiculous.
Thanks, Councillor Potter. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, well, I'm probably as surprised as Councillor Potter, but I want to, something keeps being said that I just want to clarify because it's actually not true. The function room's at the front of the building. It does not abut the general residential. It's on Dennis Street. There's 5 or 10 hotel rooms at the back. That they abut the residential. I think we're becoming quite restrictive now. Why would you bother doing business in Colac? We're demonising, I feel like we're sort of demonising these operators, yet they have made significant changes or tried to address the concerns of the residents, and now we're becoming very restrictive and yeah, I don't know why you'd bother doing business here.
Thank you. Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'm very happy to support this amendment. As I said before, noise is a funny thing. It goes around corners. If you open the door, it goes out the door, it goes around screens, and it follows the wind. So it doesn't matter whether the source of the noise is at the front of the building or the rear of the building. What it matters is which way the wind is going. It even matters the humidity of the air at times, but it will go around corners as well. So I think it's a common sense thing, and I don't see that it will prevent anyone dining after 7 p.m.
Any other councillor wishes to speak? No? Councillor Finnegan, final statement.
Thank you. Just in a broader reply, I will say in response to Councillor Potter expressing surprise that I'd be limiting opportunities for people within the music industry to get work. The reality is that most of our work, and particularly even my work as a musician, comes on Friday and Saturday nights. For example, last Saturday night I had to go and play a gig down at Camperdown for a function, and that was over by 8 p.m. Reality is, and with the other conditions we have there around the types of music and the like that can be played, and whether or not we can have acoustic guitars or whether or not they can be plugged in, is severely restrictive in itself. And there's nothing stopping people after they've had a meal or the like going to another venue in town down Murray Street that's further away from this residential zone and enjoying all that Colac has to offer.
Thank you, Councillor Finnegan. I now put the amendment to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Amendments not carried. Division. Those in favour, Councillor Finnegan, Councillor Hart, Councillor Costin. Those against, Councillor Potter, Councillor Arnott, Councillor Hanson, Councillor White. Thank you. Now we go back to the substantive motion. Councillor Potter.
I've spoken to it.
You've spoken to it.
Councillor Arnott was the seconder he reserved. He hasn't spoken
Thank
yet.
you.
I'm not sure about anybody else.
You want to speak to the motion? Is it to be opposed? I think Councillor Finnegan and Councillor Costin. Yep. Okay. Yep, Councillor Finnegan opposed. You wish to speak? You wish to speak? No?
I think I'll...
Excuse me, Councillor Finnegan, did you speak to the motion?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I did. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
you did.
spoke in
Yes.
opposition. Yeah,
So
that
now
was
we
what
have
I
a
was gonna
substantive
say.
motion. Debate picks up for those who have not spoken.
Those who
We have
have
three
not
councillors.
spoken.
Thanks.
Okay, who's not spoken? Who'd like to speak? Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'll be happy to hear the right of reply on this. I guess the permit condition, we've had, I think, 2 amendments passed, certainly some attempt to mitigate the negative effects of this particular application. But I think it is a large, you have a look at from the back of those properties, it's a large imposing building very close to the back boundary. It didn't have to be this way. I'm still open to listen to the reply, but I'll have difficulty supporting this. I think that the applicant could have set back the development from the back of the property more and could have reduced the adverse effects in that way. We haven't heard any convincing discussion about how that green wall will be maintained, and really you have, when you get to the stage where your wall's so bad to look at from neighbouring residential areas that we're going to try to grow some vegetation on it. I just think that with some modest changes to this, which reduce the bulk and size of the development, it could well have been something that would not have this divide and conquer approach that we've seen today, that could have been worked out better and could have been supported largely by the community. And when I hear criticisms such as, why would you want to come to Colac? I mean, we saw a perfect example with Buller and how they've worked and how they've got their particular application sailed through with, I think, in record time. So I do think that this is probably an overdevelopment of this particular site, and yet with some minor changes, it could well be something that even the neighbouring people would be, if not clapping and supporting, at least less unhappy with. But I do acknowledge that these changes that got through with 2 amendments do make it somewhat less bad than it was in the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. When I look at this proposal, I see fundamentally a good development, but it's shoehorned into a block that's too small and located in the wrong place beside a residential zone where a 3-storey building can be proposed to be built within 2.2 metres of a residential property. The design solution proposed is bulky. It's not in sympathy with the neighbouring residential properties. It raises some safety concerns with fire escapes, and it requires a very substantial reduction in car parking requirements. And the car parking requirements don't seem to consider future needs. It's based on current requirements. Many planning schemes that I've looked at when I was researching this require a gradual transition between the commercial property zone, a transition in building height, where they abut onto residential zones. This means that the 3rd storey might be set back some 8 or 10 metres from the boundary to provide a reduction in the visual bulk of the built form at that interface. What we have here is a hard interface. This approach gives respect to the neighbouring residential properties and minimises any adverse impacts on these allotments. And it could have been done on this site, except the applicant has tried to maximise the number of rooms on this small site. To rely on an 11-metre high green wall to soften the visual and amenity impact on the residential area just seems like putting green lipstick on a pig. We all know that the lipstick will wear off eventually, and the pig will still exist. And that's to say nothing of the exceptionally poor fire escape proposal on the north boundary. So, councillors, I oppose this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Costin. Would other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Hanson?
Yes. So planning permission is being sought for this building in Dennis Street that is quite different from anything Colac has seen before. It's a mixed-use building with a basement car park. I think Colac's first basement car park, but it won't be Colac's last. As Colac develops and grows in size, there'll no doubt be similar developments to this in time. But this, I think, is Colac's first basement car park. Which are quite common in cities, but I don't think Colac's had that before. The proposed uses include office space, cafe and function room, as well as 20 rooms of accommodation. Colac has a very well-known shortage of hotel and motel accommodation, so it's addressing a dire need for accommodation. I think everybody knows Colac can book out in very short notice. Objectors, mainly from Manifold Street, have raised a series of concerns, mainly relating to loss of privacy, shading, lighting, car parking issues and noise concerns. These are very significant. This is a significant building for Dennis Street and is a very big change for those residents in Manifold Street. The concerns raised are completely understandable. The applicant has listened to the concerns of residents and has tried to mitigate those concerns. It's hard to address all the concerns because we won't really know what it's like, the residents won't really know what it's like to live there until it's actually built. But the applicant has tried to address concerns. The application has been assessed by officers against the planning scheme and their recommendation is to grant a permit. I will be supporting that recommendation as I believe this development that is proposed is a positive development for Colac's commercial zone. The function room, as I have mentioned, is at the front of the building in Dennis Street. I don't think there has been a divide and conquer approach at all by the applicant. The applicant, they're local applicants. Their interest is in Colac, their life is in Colac. I think that's probably the last thing on their mind is to divide and conquer. But it is zoned commercial and they have tried to mitigate. I guess they're trying to build a building that they can make stack up because it will be a significant build, a significant cost. They have tried to mitigate some of the concerns, visuals at the back with the green wall, but I'm hearing criticism of the green wall, but that's actually to try and address the back of the building. You could potentially leave it, leave it blank. That would be a much cheaper thing to do. That's not what they're doing. Green walls are quite common. They can be very successful, and I hope this one is a very successful green wall. So, on the balance, I think this is a very good development for Colac, and I'll be supporting it.
Thanks, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Arnott, you reserved.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor White. This is something of a new build for Colac, and I accept that, and it does abut a residential area, and like Councillor Hanson, I do acknowledge the concerns that they've raised, which I think that the applicant has tried to address the best they possibly can. Keeping in mind that, having had experience within commercial buildings myself, this building has been designed to provide the owner with a commercial return. So they've had to come up with a design which takes into account the value of the land and what they need to do to put a building on that to get a return from that to make that work. And so this is designed to do that for them. So I'm not exactly certain what else people would expect to develop on a land of this nature. And in respect to concerns about what it would do to the value of properties behind that are immediately abut, the conversations that I've had with real estate is that the uncertainty of what would go onto a vacant block there is of greater concern than this build, which is actually designed to try to soften that with a green wall. And I acknowledge the bulk of the build, as Councillor Costins mentioned, but the green wall is something that's in use on the largest and tallest buildings within the largest metropolitan areas of the world right now. It is the latest thing that's occurring. This is a modern innovation. This is the modern way to address this. It is the modern way to address climate change by helping to do this as becoming part of the carbon sink of it even, and reducing the reflected heat that comes from these buildings. So it does address more than just the visual appeal of the building. I think this building will become a measure for future buildings in the town to have to measure their developments by, to say, well, we have to equal this or do better. So for that reason and many others, I support it.
Thank you, Councillor Arnott. We're really getting pushed for time now. So, Councillor Potter, do you want to make a final statement?
I sure do.
Thank you.
Sorry?
Councillors, we have 7 minutes left, 6 minutes, before we start the next unscheduled meeting, which is scheduled for 5:30. We only have a 30-minute window to commence it. So if we could finalise this item, officers would recommend that you very quickly resolve to defer the next item to the council meeting next week, close this meeting and start the next one, or we won't be able to address the unscheduled meeting.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I'll be quick, cut my time short. Look, I've heard some of the arguments, but I urge councillors to get behind this. When I first heard about these plans, for example, I expected to see north-facing windows, because if you're building a 3-storey building to accommodate people, you want them to look at the view across Lake Colac, across to the Warrior Hill and all the rest of it. What have we got? No, we don't have that, because they've tried to cater for the objectors and the residents. Buller's been mentioned tonight. Yeah, Buller and other companies have to put up some people in Torquay or Geelong, because we don't offer the right sort of accommodation in Colac. This does. This fits in with our council plan. This fits in with council objective. So sorry,
Yep,
Mayor, I'm
thanks,
going to have to
Councillor
wind it up, but
Well
I have more
done.
to say. But
Thank
I
you.
urge councillors to support this.
Thank you. Councillors, I'll now put this to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? Carried 4-3. Division. All those in favour? Councillor Potter, Councillor Arnott, Councillor Hanson, Councillor White. Those against? Councillor Hart, Councillor Costin, Councillor Finnegan. Thank you. Now we have to ask for a motion to defer the next item. Thank you.
Hang
No,
on, Mayor, can't we just
Use
adjourn
the
it to
27.
after the next meeting? I would prefer that we adjourn it to the next meeting. So in other words,
have an option to
we
adjourn and deal
adjourn the
with it tonight.
planning meeting until the
Okay, yep, that's a good idea.
unscheduled meeting is completed.
yeah, well,
I thought I just did.
Okay.
To what time?
I'll second
Sorry,
that.
Second
need
that.
to nominate a time, please. To start at what time?
Well, hang on a minute, 6:30 PM.
We have
Thank
15
you.
minutes of question time.
6:45 PM.
Thank you. So you want to adjourn to 6:45? You'll move that? You'll
second it.
that, Councillor Potter. Is anyone opposed to that? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried 7-0. Thank you. That will conclude this part of the planning meeting until we resume at 6:45.